It started with a single text: "Dad wants just family at the wedding." I froze because I'd paid for the entire thing. $165,000. And now I wasn't invited. I was erased. So I launched Project Consequences. I'm Elliot, and this is how I exposed my family's betrayal on their big day with one envelope that changed everything. If you've ever been used by your own blood, this story's for you. I was halfway through ordering my usual black coffee at the Starbucks on Glenwood Avenue in Raleigh when my phone buzzed. I glanced down expecting a text from work or maybe a promo email. It was from my mom. I opened it casually, but the words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Dad wants just family at the wedding. You don't need to come." I read it again, then a third time. My chest went tight. I didn't say anything to the barista, just stepped aside as the woman behind me moved forward to order. I stared at my phone, my thumb frozen above the screen. I couldn't breathe for a moment. The wedding, my brother's wedding, the one I paid for. Noah had met Layla a year and a half ago at a work retreat in Charleston. She was beautiful, polished, the kind of woman you see on the cover of bridal magazines. Her dad owned a string of upscale resorts along the Carolina coast. When they got engaged, my mom was ecstatic. Gerald, my stepdad, acted like Noah had just landed the president's daughter. I was happy for him, or at least I told myself I was. It was last November when Mom called me late one night. She said Noah and Layla had found the perfect venue, but Layla's family was already putting down money for the rehearsal dinner and the honeymoon suite in Savannah. They needed help covering the ceremony and reception. I didn't even hesitate. I told her I'd take care of it. I contacted my bank the next morning. I stood there with the text still open, the cold sting of betrayal sinking in. I thought about the $65,000 I had wired to the event planner, the $20,000 that went to the photographer, the band, and the custom floral design Layla just had to have. I even covered the deposit for the honeymoon villa in Turks and Caicos. And now I was being told I wasn't part of the family. I walked out of Starbucks without the coffee, got in my car, and sat there with the engine running. My hands were gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I tried to call Mom, but it went to voicemail. I didn't bother leaving a message. What would I even say? The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the parking lot. I stared out at nothing, just letting the silence wrap around me. A part of me wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, that maybe Mom had typed it wrong. But I knew her. She was never careless with words. I thought about the last time we were all together. Christmas Eve at their place in Durham. Gerald had made his usual offhand remarks about people who work in tech being overpaid nerds. Mom had smiled nervously, like always. Noah was glued to Layla's side, introducing her like royalty to our extended family. I had brought a bottle of whiskey as a gift, the kind Gerald liked, and he left it unopened on the counter. I wasn't even mad at Noah. At least not yet. He'd always been the golden child. The miracle baby after Mom's first marriage fell apart. I was her son from a different chapter, the one she rarely talked about in front of company. Gerald never let me forget it. I drove home to my apartment on Morgan Street, a small 2-bedroom on the 3rd floor. As soon as I stepped inside, the stillness hit me. I tossed my keys on the kitchen counter and sat down on the couch. The living room was dim except for the slant of light coming through the blinds. I opened my laptop and scrolled through the wedding email thread with the event planner. Everything was in my name. Every wire transfer, every invoice. I pulled up my bank account. The balance stared back at me, much smaller than it was a few months ago. "Dad wants just family." I read the text again. The words burned. I clicked on Noah's contact and stared at it. My thumb hovered. I wanted to call him, demand an explanation. But what if he agreed with them? What if he had been in on it all along? I dropped the phone on the couch beside me. My chest ached in a strange way, not like heartbreak. More like something slowly twisting inside me, the kind of pain that comes when you realize you've been used. I stood up and walked to my bookshelf. On the top shelf was a photo of me and Noah taken 8 years ago at my graduation from NC State. He was 17, still a kid, awkward and smiling. I had my arm around him, proud. I remember that day. I had bought him a tie just for the occasion. He didn't come to mine. A laugh escaped my throat, bitter and hollow. I turned the photo face down. Then I grabbed my laptop and opened a new folder on the desktop. I didn't know what I would put in it yet. I just named it. Project Consequences. It all started back in 20, right around the time Noah got accepted into his graduate program at Wake Forest. He called me that day, voice shaking with excitement, and I could hear Mom cheering in the background. He had been waitlisted for weeks, and when the acceptance came through, I remember thinking maybe this is when things start to feel more equal between us. Maybe this is when I stop being just the safety net. He didn't have enough for tuition, and the financial aid package was underwhelming. Mom called me the same night, voice soft and full of motherly concern. She said Noah had worked so hard and she didn't want money to stand in the way of his future. I was already paying off my own student loans from NC State, but I told her not to worry. I wired the first payment 2 days later. That's how it always went. Noah needed a used car to get to class. I found a decent Camry from a co-worker's cousin and paid the full amount up front. When his laptop crashed during finals week, I overnighted mine to him. I never asked for anything back. I told myself that's what older brothers do, especially when there's no dad around. Gerald was never more than a fixture in the background, barely acknowledging me unless it was to correct or criticize. By the time Noah graduated in 2020, he had zero debt. I had only a few thousand in savings, but I felt good about what I'd done. He was working at a financial firm in Charleston by then, and every now and then he would send me texts about a cool restaurant he tried or a podcast I should listen to. We weren't close, not in the way some brothers are, but there was a rhythm to it. A one-sided rhythm, sure, but a rhythm. Then came Layla Monroe. Noah met her at a client dinner, or maybe it was a fundraiser. I never got the full story. All I knew was that within 6 months he was visiting her family estate in Mount Pleasant every other weekend, and posting pictures of oyster roasts and rooftop parties with captions like, "Grateful and living life." She was stunning, I'll give her that, all white teeth and champagne dresses. Her family was old money, the kind that didn't blink at a $70,000 floral budget. The engagement announcement came in early 2023. Mom called me breathless, practically squealing. Layla had said yes, and the wedding was set for May 2024. They were booking a historic plantation venue complete with horse-drawn carriages and a gospel choir for the ceremony. I congratulated her, smiling into the phone even as something heavy settled in my gut. A few weeks later, she called again. This time her tone was different, calmer, almost businesslike. Layla's parents were already covering the honeymoon, the bridal suite, and the rehearsal dinner. But the ceremony and reception, she explained, were still unfunded. Noah's savings weren't enough, and they didn't want to burden the Monroe family with everything. She paused before saying it. "Would you be willing to help, just temporarily? We can pay it back little by little, I promise." I hesitated for maybe 5 seconds before I said yes. I told myself I had time. I had good credit, stable income. I could apply for a personal loan, maybe shift some things around. The number she gave me made my breath catch. $165,000. My chest tightened, but I still said yes. I filed the application the next day through my bank's online portal. By the end of the week, the funds were wired to the wedding planner's account. I asked for an itemized breakdown, mostly out of curiosity. The dress alone was 16 grand. Custom dance floor, private chef designer, floral installations, drone videography. Everything had a name and a price tag. Layla wanted a wedding that looked like a movie, and I was the invisible executive producer. Over the next few months, I kept getting forwarded invoices, all with my name listed as the primary contact. I didn't hear much from Mom or Noah unless they needed me to approve a vendor or sign off on a contract. Layla texted me once thanking me for believing in their future. It felt like someone signing a receipt. Around September, I started to feel the weight. The interest alone was creeping up faster than I expected. I adjusted my budget, skipped a vacation I had been planning for 2 years, and pulled some money from my emergency fund. Every time I thought about backing out, I heard Mom's voice saying, "We'll pay it back, sweetheart. We just need a little time." But then the updates stopped coming. By late October, I was out of the loop. No emails, no calls. I didn't even know the exact date of the wedding until I asked Noah directly. He gave me a vague answer, said Layla was handling most of the details. I chalked it up to pre-wedding chaos, told myself they were just overwhelmed. It wasn't until November that I started feeling something was off. We had dinner at Mom's place. Gerald was in his usual chair, grunting hellos and sipping scotch. Noah sat next to Layla, glued to his phone half the time. I brought a bottle of Pinot for the table and a check for $3,000 to cover the last-minute catering addition I had just approved. Mom barely looked at it before slipping it into her purse. Nobody said thank you. As we were clearing the plates, I asked Noah if he needed help writing his vows. His face stiffened for a second. Layla answered instead, saying they'd decided to keep it traditional, no personal vows. That was the first time I saw it. The shift. I wasn't part of this story anymore. I was just the wallet. When I left that night, it was already dark and drizzling. I sat in the car for a while, watching the light in the front window, wondering how I became the outsider. I should have said something. I should have asked Mom what she meant by just family. But I didn't. I drove home in silence. Now, staring at the empty folder on my desktop, I felt something stir, not anger, not yet, something deeper. The slow, cold realization that I had handed them the knife and then turned my back. I had trusted them with everything I had left. Project Consequences wasn't just a name anymore. It was a promise. The first time I met Gerald Winters, I was 10 years old and wearing a suit 2 sizes too big. Mom had dragged me to a barbecue at his place in Chapel Hill. He was a partner at a mid-sized accounting firm, recently divorced, and to her a beacon of stability. I remember standing by the cooler trying to open a Coke when he looked down at me and said, "So this is the kid from the first round." That phrase stuck. He never hit me, never raised his voice, but his disapproval was constant, carved into every look, every sigh, every dismissive wave of the hand. When I tried to join the conversation, I was too quiet, too nerdy, too much like my real dad, whom Mom had divorced before I turned 2. Gerald never said his name. He just referred to him as your mother's mistake. When they got married a year later, we moved into his 2-story colonial on Willow Creek Road. Everything had a place, everything was labeled. Even the remote controls were marked with laminated tape like I was some guest in a museum. My room was the smallest. I wasn't allowed to have posters on the wall. Gerald said they made the house look cheap. Mom tried to smooth it over. She called him structured, said he just liked order. But I learned quickly not to leave my shoes near the door or take snacks without asking. I ate dinner in silence while he quizzed her about her spending. If I got a B on a math test, he made a joke about maybe I should try social studies instead. If I got an A, he said it must have been an easy test. By the time Noah was born, I was 12. Gerald lit up like it was the second coming. Everything became about the baby. I got bumped from my bedroom to the guest room so they could turn mine into a nursery. Mom apologized, said it was temporary. It wasn't. She started missing parent-teacher conferences. Gerald took control of the bills. My name faded from the Christmas cards. One winter when I was 15, I came home early from a school trip. I had told Mom the wrong return date by mistake. It was snowing lightly and I hadn't brought a key. I rang the bell 3 times before Gerald opened the door. He looked surprised, almost annoyed. "Why didn't you call first?" he said. "Your mother's not home." I asked if I could come in and wait. He blocked the door with his arm and told me to go to the diner down the road, maybe get a hot chocolate and wait there. Then he shut the door. I stood outside for 10 minutes before walking to Miller's Diner and ordering a grilled cheese I couldn't afford. The waitress gave me extra fries and told me I looked like I needed it. I still remember the warmth of that booth, the way the vinyl stuck to my coat from the snow melting underneath me. Years later, when I brought it up to Mom, she said he must have misunderstood. She looked tired, older, like she had given up fighting for anything except peace. After I left for college, I barely came back. I stayed on campus over the holidays, picked up extra shifts at the bookstore. Gerald never called. Mom texted sometimes short updates about Noah or pictures of her garden. I replied less and less. And yet somehow I still ended up paying for that wedding. What did that make me the son from the first round? It wasn't just the past that stung. It was the way he still treated me even now as an adult. At Thanksgiving last year, he asked if I was still doing that tech thing like I was some kid soldering wires in a garage. When I mentioned the promotion I had received at Apex Digital, he nodded and said, "Well, someone has to do the behind-the-scenes stuff." I sat there watching him carve the turkey like he was some patriarch. Noah toasted him with his glass of red wine, called him a real role model. I didn't even raise my glass, and now he was the one deciding who counted as family. Mom's message wasn't her words. I knew that. It had Gerald's voice written all over it, the kind of clean surgical cut he was good at. He never yelled, never made a scene. He just edited people out of his life like bad figures on a spreadsheet, efficient, final. He had spent years convincing Mom that conflict was chaos, that silence was strength, that love should look like obedience, and I had swallowed it for so long, convinced that being quiet was the same as being strong. But now there was money involved, and legality, and my name. He couldn't edit me out of this one. I pulled out an old storage bin from my closet. Inside were folders from college receipts, letters, and a few printed photos. I found a manila envelope marked 2007 and opened it. My high school diploma, a birthday card from my aunt, a photo of me at my NC State graduation standing alone because no one came. I put it all back and set it beside my laptop. This wasn't just about the wedding anymore. This was about every locked door, every invisible bruise, every time I was made to feel like a placeholder in my own family. I wasn't going to be invisible anymore. Outside, the wind had picked up. The leaves scraped against the windows like they were trying to get in. I sat back in my chair, the blue glow of my screen casting long shadows across the floor. Somewhere in the silence, I could hear my heartbeat steady and sharp. I opened the folder labeled Project Consequences and started to type. The message came 2 days later around midnight, just as I was closing my laptop. I hadn't heard her name in 3 years, but there it was, glowing on my screen. Ava Brooks. I stared at the profile picture before opening it. She looked the same. Confident smile, auburn curls, blazer sharp as her jawline. The message was short. Saw your post. Are you okay? I hadn't meant to write anything dramatic, just a status update that read something like, "Family's a complicated word. The kind of thing you post when you're too angry to explain but too tired to be silent. I thought maybe a few coworkers would react. I didn't expect her." I typed back before I could overthink it. "Been better," she replied within minutes. "Can I call?" My chest tightened as the screen lit up with her number. I hadn't changed it. She hadn't either. I answered on the third ring. "Hey," she said. Her voice hadn't changed, still calm, measured, like she was always one step ahead in a courtroom. I almost said her name out loud, but stopped myself. "You okay?" she asked again. "No," I said. "Not really." "Want to talk about it?" I told her everything about the wedding, the money, the text, Gerald. I didn't hold back. For some reason, it felt safe to say it all to her, like she had been storing space in her chest for my words this whole time. She didn't interrupt, just listened. When I finally paused, she said something that made me sit up. "Are you sure they haven't used your name for anything else?" "What do you mean?" "You said you took out a personal loan, right, in your name. Did you co-sign anything else, open joint lines of credit?" "No." "I don't think so." "Can you check?" I hesitated. Ava had always been the kind of person who didn't ask questions unless she already had a hunch. I trusted her instincts more than my own. She offered to help, said she had a contact at a consumer credit agency who owed her a favor. She could pull my records and flag anything suspicious. I didn't ask why she was offering. I just said thank you. The next morning, I emailed her my info. That night, she called again. "You're not going to like this," she said. "What? There's a secondary account under your name. A revolving credit line opened 2 months ago. Different lender than the original wedding loan. Same address, same phone number. Authorized user listed as Karen Winters." My mouth went dry. "How much?" "35 grand, she said. "Maxed out." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My mind spun trying to remember anything Mom had said, any paperwork I had signed, but there was nothing. No phone call, no email, just silence. Ava waited. "You think it was intentional?" I finally asked. "I think they knew you'd never question it," she said. "You've been the fallback plan your whole life. Maybe they thought you wouldn't notice, or maybe they didn't care if I did." We sat in silence for a long time, the kind of silence that stretches like a bridge between two people standing at opposite ends of a history they almost built together. "Remember when your mom told me I wasn't right for you?" she said softly. "Yeah. She said I'd distract you from your responsibilities, that you were too important to be tied down." I remember. She was wrong, Elliot. You were already tied down. Just not to me. I swallowed hard. My throat ached. I hadn't thought about that night in years. The way Mom had pulled me aside after dinner with Ava and told me she was worried, that Ava's ambition would make me feel small, that she didn't come from a family that understood sacrifice. Ava had never said anything back then. She just let me pull away like she knew I would. "I'm sorry," I whispered. She didn't say anything. I needed a lawyer, and she was the only one I trusted. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. Report it. Call the bank, press charges. But for the first time in days, I didn't feel alone. Later that week, Ava sent over documents to begin building a case. Fraud, identity, misuse, breach of fiduciary trust. Big words that made my skin crawl. She was methodical, professional, but I could still feel the warmth under her words. Like she cared more than she let on. She also sent me an audio file. "What's this?" I texted. "Just listen." It was a voicemail. Short, scratchy. My mom's voice. "We'll just use Elliot's info for now, Gerald. He's always helping anyway. He won't question it." My hands went cold. When did she say that? Ava typed back. "My contact flagged it from a bank rep's recorded call. Internal protocol. They didn't know it was being pulled for legal review." I stared at the screen. I had always known my mom could be manipulative. But this was different. This wasn't just passive silence. This was a decision, a choice, a betrayal wrapped in a familiar voice. I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair. The ceiling above me felt too low. The walls too tight. Everything I had known felt like it was tilting sideways. They didn't just cut me out. They stole from me and called it love. I didn't sleep that night. I just kept hearing her voice on loop, casual, smooth, like she was ordering groceries. I tried to picture what Gerald had said back. Probably nothing. Probably just nodded. Somehow that was worse. I got up at sunrise and started writing again. Names, dates, numbers. I pulled every email, every receipt, every message. Ava said we needed a paper trail and I was going to give her a forest. There was no going back now, and I didn't want to. I spent the next morning buried in statements. I printed every bank document, scanned every signature, and compared every application line by line. Ava had sent over templates for affidavits, fraud reports, and formal dispute letters. She warned me that things might get uglier before they got better. She wasn't wrong. By noon, we were on a video call. Ava had her glasses on and a legal pad in front of her, her tone crisp but gentle. "Elliot, there's another account we need to talk about." I froze. "Another?" She nodded. "A secondary revolving credit line. Opened 2 weeks after the first one. 35,000. Opened in your name, different lender, but same home address in Durham. This one's already flagged as suspicious by the agency." My throat went dry. "What is it for?" Ava tapped her pen against her notepad. "That's the part that's worse. The funds were used to pay a private events company in Mount Pleasant. The address matches a property owned by Rick Monroe. Layla's dad." "Yeah, a waterfront estate. It looks like they hosted a pre-wedding reception there. Caterers, decorators, valet service, even a jazz trio from New Orleans." I felt the floor shift under me. So they threw a party. With my money. Without even telling me. They used your name and forged your consent. I pulled the vendor records. The contracts are signed by Karen Winters and Gerald Winters, listed as co-organizers. You were listed as financial guarantor. I covered my face with both hands. A dull ringing built behind my eyes. They hadn't just taken from me. They had rewritten the narrative, cast me as some silent benefactor while excluding me from every moment of it. Did Noah know? That's the next thing we need to find out. I got up and walked to the window. The street outside was quiet. A mail carrier crossed the sidewalk with a bundle in hand. For a moment, I felt like I was watching someone else's life. My mind snapped back to the voicemail. My mother's voice, casual and deliberate. "Use Elliot's info for now. He won't question it." Ava spoke again, her voice softer. "We can file charges, we can pursue civil damages, but you need to decide how public you want this to be. It's not about public. It's about principle. Then let's build this right." We ended the call, and I sat on the couch in silence. I pictured the party. White tents fluttering in the coastal breeze. Lanterns swinging from trees, champagne flutes clinking. My mother in pearls, Gerald in his smug beige suit, Layla's parents making toasts. All of them celebrating a union I had funded but was never welcome to attend. There had been no mention of this party on any of the official plans. No mention in the email threads. No RSVP. Not even a whisper of gratitude. I pulled up the private events company's website. They had photos from past events on their homepage. My pulse spiked as I scrolled, and then I saw it. A gallery marked April 13th. I clicked. There they were. Noah and Layla at the center of a glowing crowd, hands clasped, surrounded by family and friends. Mom and Gerald beaming in the background. Even Rick Monroe in a crisp linen suit giving a toast with one hand raised. I wasn't in a single frame. Single. Of course I wasn't. The caption read, Monroe West Welcome Dinner. Hosted by the Winters family. I leaned back, the image burned into my brain. The gall it took to sign my name, to use my credit, to smile for cameras while I sat alone in my apartment wondering why no one called. The rage came in waves, cold, then hot, then bitter again. I opened the Project Consequences folder and added a new section. Pre-wedding financials. I pasted the gallery screenshots, vendor names, and bank statements. I annotated every line Ava flagged. I needed more. I called the customer service line for the event company and posed as Elliot Winters inquiring about the invoice. The woman on the line was chipper, full of southern charm. Yes, sir, that event was paid in full. Final invoice processed under the Winters account. Balance cleared by Mrs. Karen Winters. Would you like a copy for your records? Yes, please email it to the address on file. 10 minutes later, it arrived. My name at the top, my billing address, a signature line scrawled with my initials. Except I never wrote those letters. I never saw that contract. I forwarded everything to Ava. She replied within the hour. This is textbook misrepresentation. We'll build the timeline, include your financial statements, and establish pattern of unauthorized use. You'll have a case. I didn't know what justice would look like yet. I wasn't even sure I wanted court, but I wanted them to know I knew. I wanted them to see what they had done and feel the weight of it. That night I didn't sleep. I replayed every favor, every time I said yes when I should have asked why. I remembered Mom telling Ava she wasn't right for me because she was too ambitious, because she didn't understand family. But Ava understood everything now, and she was still here. By morning I had a timeline drafted, a paper trail thick enough to start a fire, and for the first time in weeks I didn't feel powerless. I felt ready. The hardest part wasn't confronting them. It was knowing who to start with. Gerald didn't deserve the courtesy of my voice. My mother had already made her stance clear, but Noah. He had always been the kid I protected, the one I carried through the mess, and somehow that made his silence the loudest betrayal of all. I called him Saturday morning. He didn't pick up. I tried again that evening. No answer. So I drove to Charleston the next day. His apartment was in a modern complex near the harbor, sleek and sterile with key fobs and gated parking. I buzzed his unit. He answered, voice flat. What's up? We need to talk. In person. Long pause. Then the door clicked open. He looked surprised when he saw me. Tired, maybe. Unshaven. He wore a t-shirt from some fintech startup and gray sweatpants. The living room smelled like takeout and stale coffee. You could have just called, he mumbled. You didn't answer. He sat down on the couch, picking up a half-empty bottle of water. I didn't sit. What's going on? He asked, like I hadn't just driven 4 hours to ask him that. You know what's going on. He frowned. Elliot, if this is about Mom, it's about you, about that party, about the 35 grand taken out in my name to throw it at Layla's dad's house. Without my knowledge. His face tightened. I watched the wheels turning, watched him try to choose a lie. Then he looked down. I didn't sign anything, he said quietly, but you knew. Noah's jaw flexed. You knew and you let it happen. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. He stood, finally rubbing the back of his neck. Layla's parents had all these expectations. Her dad said we needed to host something, keep up appearances. Mom offered to help. Gerald said it'd be handled, and then Layla found out the money was in your name. I told her it wasn't right, and she said if I made it an issue, she'd call off the wedding. Said I was prioritizing my brother over her family. I stared at him. The silence hung like fog. So you picked her. I picked survival, he snapped. You don't get it, Elliot. Her dad runs in circles I'll never belong to. If I lost this marriage, I'd lose everything, my job, my reputation, all of it. I couldn't risk that. I stepped closer. So you let them use me. You let them lie, because it was convenient. He swallowed hard. I never wanted it to be this way. But you let it. He didn't speak. Do you know what that feels like? I asked, my voice shaking. To be erased from something you built. To watch the people you love treat you like a transaction. He looked away. I helped you through school. I bought your first car. I co-signed your lease. I gave up vacations, skipped promotions, stretched every paycheck to make your life easier. And you couldn't even send a text warning me. I didn't know how he whispered. That's not good enough. Noah sat back down, burying his face in his hands. I could see the shame in his shoulders, the way they slumped, like someone who finally realized what they cost someone else. I wanted to forgive him. I really did. But something inside me had shifted. Maybe forever. I picked up the printed copy of the vendor contract and dropped it on the coffee table. You're getting married in 6 weeks. I suggest you figure out who you really want at that altar. I turned and walked out without waiting for a reply. The morning of the wedding arrived with an eerie calm. Charleston was humid, the kind of wet air that clung to your skin and made even the nicest suits feel suffocating. Ava and I parked 3 blocks from the venue. She wore a charcoal gray pantsuit, her hair pinned up. I had never seen her so composed, so razor sharp. We went over everything one last time. The envelope was thick, sealed, addressed in clean block letters to Mr. and Mrs. Monroe. Inside was the printed dossier, the notarized statements, the bank records, the audio transcript, and a handwritten note from me. It read, "Thank you for reminding me I never belonged. Now I have no reason to stay silent." Ava handed the envelope to a courier with a badge from Morning Bell Florals. She had arranged it through a vendor connection. The envelope would be delivered at precisely 3:05 p.m., just after the ceremony began. We didn't attend the ceremony. We watched from a nearby coffee shop, Ava's laptop open, notifications turned on. We had copies ready to send to the press, to our legal team, to a selected list of bloggers and legal forums. At 3:12 p.m., Ava got the first text from her contact. It landed. By 3:17 p.m., the first ripple hit. Someone inside the event posted a photo of the open envelope spread across the reception table, the audio transcript partially visible. Another guest posted a picture of Karen slumped in her chair being fanned by a waitress. Layla had disappeared from the main ballroom. Then came the video. A local lifestyle reporter named Jasmine Reeves had been attending the wedding as a guest. She was live streaming the cocktail hour. When the envelope arrived, she didn't stop recording. Her phone caught the moment Rick Monroe stood up, face flushed red, shouting across the room at Gerald. "You signed this without telling me." Gerald tried to quiet him. Karen was crying. A few older guests were already leaving, clutching their purses, whispering to one another. Layla stormed back into the ballroom just as the band was warming up. She grabbed the envelope from the table and screamed, "You ruined everything!" Rick turned on her. "You said his brother was on board with this?" Layla's voice cracked. "I didn't know they'd send proof." More yelling. Someone knocked over a champagne tower. The sound of glass breaking sliced through the speakers. The video went viral within the hour. The hashtag #Monroe Wedding Meltdown started trending regionally. Jasmine tagged me in the post, though I hadn't said a word publicly. I watched it unfold with a strange kind of calm. Like standing in the eye of a storm I built myself. It didn't feel like revenge, it felt like release. Ava sat across from me watching comments scroll in. "This is bigger than we thought," she said. "Do you want to make a statement now?" "Not yet. Let it breathe." At 4:45 p.m., the Monroe family released a hasty press statement through their foundation's media rep. It was bland, vague, filled with phrases like unexpected incident and family matter. It didn't mention my name, but the comments did. "Is that the same Monroe family that owns Brightwell Pharma? Wait, is this about that guy who paid for the wedding and got disinvited?" I scrolled through until I saw it. A guest had uploaded a picture of the envelope zoomed in on my handwriting. The note was blurry but legible. It was mine. Ava leaned over. "You just became the face of betrayal." I nodded, and maybe something more. The wedding continued, but photos showed a half-empty ballroom. The dinner was served, but no one smiled. Layla never changed into her second dress. Noah was seen standing by the restroom for 20 minutes talking on his phone. By sunset, the band had packed up early. I watched the skyline shift, the light falling across the cobblestones of Charleston. Somewhere behind those walls, the family that erased me was finally forced to read my story. And this time they couldn't rewrite it. The ripple became a wave overnight. By Sunday morning, I woke up to 97 notifications. My inbox had messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some were old classmates, some were colleagues from previous jobs. Most of them just wrote one sentence: "I saw what happened. Proud of you." A blogger named Paige Sullivan picked up the story that morning. Her site, Justice at Home, had a decent following, mostly focused on community-level legal battles and social betrayals. She wrote a detailed post titled, "The Brother Who Paid for Everything and Got Erased." Within hours, it had 10,000 shares. By Sunday night, it was trending on Twitter. Reddit threads popped up in multiple subs. Our family drama, our legal advice. Even Reuther Charleston started speculating on the Monroe family's shady dealings. People dug into Brightwell Pharma's donation history. Someone claimed they found shell donations to tax shelters in the Caymans. On Monday morning, I got a call from a local news producer. "Mr. West, we're putting together a segment on your situation. Would you be open to comment?" "Not yet," I said, still processing everything. "Understood. Just know the story's gained traction. We're hearing whispers of regulatory interest." I hung up, stunned. I hadn't expected it to go this far. I thought they'd be embarrassed, maybe socially bruised, but this was deeper. Rick Monroe's company was a major player in Charleston's development circles. If he went under, it wouldn't just bruise his image. It would send cracks through his empire. That afternoon, Ava and I met at her office. She already had 3 voicemails from attorneys who wanted to connect, some offering to take the case pro bono just to be involved. "You just became a symbol," she said. "People aren't just mad about what happened to you. They're mad because it's familiar." She wasn't wrong. Hundreds of comments said the same thing. "This is my mom too. My brother did the same thing. I paid for my cousin's college and she blocked me once she graduated." By Tuesday, Paige posted a follow-up blog with additional evidence we sent her. She had access to the public parts of the credit filings and interviewed 2 of the vendors. The post included screenshots of my name on financial documents and quotes from the event planner confirming I had been cut from the list last minute. That was when the state tax board issued a notice of inquiry into Brightwell Pharma's accounts. Someone had forwarded them the screenshots from Reddit. That evening, I got a message from a private account. No name, just a text, "You ruined everything." I stared at it for a while. I didn't respond. Ava reported it. She said it was likely from Layla or her sister based on the IP trace. But it didn't shake me. If anything, it confirmed what we already knew. They were unraveling. My mother hadn't reached out. Neither had Noah. Gerald posted a vague Bible quote on Facebook about forgiveness and family, but never addressed the incident directly. Comments were turned off. On Wednesday, I got a knock at my apartment. A courier. Legal notice. Layla's father had filed for a gag order. He claimed defamation and financial interference. Ava laughed when I showed it to her. "They're panicking," she said. "No judge is going to grant this, not after what we've shown, not after the fraud report." She drafted our official response that night, attached every piece of evidence, listed our formal complaint of identity misuse and fraudulent loan activity. She cited precedent-attached statutes and wrapped it all in a tone of calm, professional certainty. The next morning, Paige ran a third piece titled "The Attempt to Silence a Brother." She linked the gag order and our legal response. Public sympathy exploded. It wasn't just a family drama anymore. It was a cautionary tale, a conversation about trust betrayal and the cost of silence. I scrolled through the comments again late into the night. One caught my eye. My daughter said she wants to be like Mr. West when she grows up, that he stood up for himself even when his own family turned on him. I shut the laptop. For the first time in weeks, I slept without waking up in the dark. The knock came 3 days after the news cycle started to quiet. I was packing a box of books when I heard it. It wasn't forceful, just tentative enough to be familiar. I opened the door and found Noah standing there. He looked thinner, like he hadn't eaten right in days. His tie was askew and there was a rip in the sleeve of his blazer. He held a paper bag with 2 coffees. I thought maybe we could talk. I didn't say anything, just stepped aside. He walked in slowly like he was unsure of his right to be there. He sat on the couch. I stayed standing. "You were right," he said. "That's not the point." He looked up at me. I knew what they were doing was wrong. I knew it from the beginning. I just didn't think I had the strength to stop it. I was scared of losing Layla, of disappointing everyone, but in the end I lost myself. I nodded once, letting Sunt stretch. "I want to pay you back. Every cent. I know it'll take time, but I'll find a way." I shook my head. "That money's gone. You don't owe me cash, Noah. You owe me honesty, and it's too late for that." He blinked like he'd been slapped. "I'm not trying to win you back," he said. "I just want to do the right thing now. Maybe you are. But I'm not sure you understand yet. This wasn't about money. It was about being erased. You stood by while they turned me into a wallet with no name." He didn't try to argue. Karen sent a text that afternoon. I didn't read it until the next day. It said she was sorry, that she didn't realize how much this would cost me, that Gerald had convinced her I'd understand that I was strong enough to handle it. She ended with, "I miss you." I didn't reply. Gerald never reached out, not even a voicemail. And that told me everything I needed. I finished packing that week. Ava helped me load the U-Haul. She'd found a small office to rent in Asheville near the town square. Said she was done working for firms that picked clients based on last names. We drove together a few hours north. The leaves were just starting to change. My grandmother's porch was clean when we arrived. She had baked muffins. "You're staying this time?" she asked. I nodded. Ava moved into the guest house 2 weeks later. It started quiet. Coffee in the mornings, walks through the park. We didn't label anything, just let it unfold, and it felt real. Like something earned, not expected. One evening, sitting on the porch swing, she asked me if I was going to pursue the lawsuit. I looked at the mountains, then at her. No, not because they don't deserve it, but because I don't want my next chapter to be about them. She nodded. That's healthy. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired. Both can be true. I sent an email to our legal contacts the next morning. We'd be holding the evidence, not erasing it, just closing the folder. For now. Ava watched me hit send. That's it. That's it. There was no grand finale, no courtroom drama, just quiet, just the steady rhythm of starting over. And somehow that was enough. I used to think revenge would feel like fire, that when it came it would burn hot and loud and leave scorched earth in its wake. But the truth is, it felt like closing a door, one that had stayed open too long. I didn't wake up with a grin or a sense of triumph. I just felt steady, maybe for the first time in my adult life. The betrayal no longer dictated my steps. It sat behind me now in a folder on a closed laptop. I had breakfast with Grandma on the porch most mornings. Ava sometimes joined. We talked about mundane things, groceries, her garden, which neighbors walked their dogs too early. One day she looked at me and said, I haven't seen you this peaceful since you were a kid. I smiled. I felt it too. Noah texted a few times over the next months. I responded politely, but I didn't engage. He wasn't the enemy, but he wasn't my brother in the way I needed. Karen sent a Christmas card. I didn't open it. Gerald stayed silent. I preferred it that way. Ava and I eventually found a rhythm. We weren't perfect, but we were honest, and that mattered more. I didn't share the full story online, not until much later. When I did, I wrote it like I was telling it to someone sitting across from me. No big declarations, just truth. The ending wasn't about them. It was about me. Revenge didn't make me better, but it made sure I wasn't invisible anymore. So if you're out there listening, wondering if you're wrong for walking away from people who should have protected you, let me say this. Sometimes you have to leave the place called home to find yourself again. And if you had to walk away to protect your peace, you are not alone. Like, share, subscribe if this story stayed with you. There are more stories like this, and maybe, just maybe, one of them will help you feel seen.